Long time no see. Um, yeah, it's been a really long time. So, in a few weeks, about 2 weeks, I guess, it'll be a year since I came home to the United States from Japan. And what I want to talk about, since I'm not really living in Japan anymore, so I can't explain the culture to you as thoroughly as somebody else might be able to. Although, if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them. I want to talk about reverse culture shock. I might have talked about culture shock in one of my other videos, but for me personally, reverse culture shock just hit me a lot harder. I When I came back to the United States, I had just broken up with my boyfriend, um, and it was not an easy breakup. It was really rough for me. I was It was at this turning point where all of my friends were about to head off to their colleges and out of state, and I kind of felt like I was going to be left behind since I was just staying to take a gap year. Um, it was a lot of transitions at once, which might have exacerbated the situation, but it may have just been culture shock. I can't say for sure. I know some people that have experienced it tremendously, and some people who experienced it but didn't notice it very much. And I feel like that's a little bit more common when you're coming from a country that's English speaking and has a lot of shared Western culture, like Canada to the United States. There might be culture shock, but it might not be as extreme. Um, but then again, it's all individual. The first things I noticed for me were that when I came home, I was all dressed up. I was wearing all of my makeup. I was wearing jewelry, high heels, and in my hometown, that is not really normal. It's becoming a little bit more normal gradually, but in Boulder, it's not normal. Most people go out wearing athletic gear. But in Japan, it's very common for outings to be something that you prepare yourself for, that I mean, you pick out an outfit, you try on several, you plan out your makeup, you do it, and you try really hard. Maybe that's just what I experienced, but in general, it's not unusual to see women out wearing large amounts of makeup or just out at the grocery store wearing a very nice dress and heels. Um, and it took me a while to get used to not doing that, but that was just one of the minor things that made me feel like I was set apart. Another thing was that when I got home, it was the first time that I had seen any of my family in person for 10 months, and that is a big transition when you go from having a lot of freedom in a sense where you don't see your parents very much or you don't see your siblings very much, so you don't really fight, to living with them again. And it's strange to be able to live with people that you understand all the time. That was a big thing. It felt weird to understand what was going on all the time just because I got so used to not understanding, like getting in the car and having no idea where we're going because everybody thinks that I was listening when I wasn't. Um, they assume that I understand what's going on, and then halfway through a half-hour drive, I'm like, hey, where are we going? Um, yeah. But when you get home, you understand everything that's going on, and misunderstandings aren't as much of a thing anymore. And for a while, it made my family life a lot better. But I was also going through this period where in Japan, I it was very strict. I wasn't actually allowed to date. I did, but I wasn't allowed to. I I had to be home at a very certain time. It depended on the host family, but it was usually around 9 o'clock. And then I come home and I don't really have a curfew. I don't have any rules that are constricting me. I can get a job. It just a lot of freedom thrown at me at once. And I was a little bit manic. I wasn't really grounded just because the transition happened in such a short period of time. I mean, you go from living with your host family and saying goodbye to your friends and thinking about going home and it just feeling like such a foreign place to going to the airport and getting on the plane and then just being home within, I mean, at least in the United States, within 12 hours. It's just a very, very big thing in a very short time. And I feel as though I've heard about some exchange programs that offer a return orientation as well as the orientation that they give you when you get to your host country, I mean. Um, which, if you have the option to take, I would recommend it. I think that slowing down the process a little bit more might help. Um, my exchange program, Greenheart Travel, they offer support, but they didn't really force it on me. It wasn't something that was very prevalent that they discuss the reverse culture shock very much, but it had a great effect upon me. Um, you'll start noticing people getting irritated or bored when you just keep talking about the country you were in, about all of the situations you'd been through. And the thing is that it's really frustrating because that's your life right then. That has been such an experience for you that you have grown so much just from this one little thing, and you feel like you understand the world in a new way, and nobody really understands it because they haven't experienced that in the same way, or at least for most people they haven't. um, and they just, it's not as relevant to them, so it's not as much of a conversation topic, and not to mention hearing about it constantly gets a little bit old. I think that maybe some people warm back up to it after you leave it for a little while, give them space on it, but it's important to have an outlet to talk about it. I mean, if you can find a group of returned exchange students, that might be a really great outlet for you, or finding a way to keep learning the culture and the language, a language group or school even, that might be great. You can teach your class if you're still in high school. Um, I think that some exchange programs offer um, so many ums. They allow you to become a part of the exchange program. I know that Greenheart Travel, all of their employees have been exchange students, so they can understand what the students are going through a little bit better. And I think that makes it a better exchange program. But that might be an option for you. If it is, I'd recommend it. It's really important to have an outlet where you can keep growing and experiencing that culture, but you can kind of bring yourself back to what you knew before. Another really difficult part was how coming home didn't feel like home for me. It it didn't feel like the place I was supposed to be. I'm not really sure if that makes sense, but I feel like home has a lot. It is a very loaded word. Home. It describes all of these feelings, and for me, they're very positive. For some, they might be negative, but a sense of comfort and familiarity. And when I got home, nothing was familiar. So much had changed, and I just couldn't accept it. It boggled my mind. It took a while to get used to. Um, it was, yeah. It feels strange being a foreigner in your own culture and not really understanding why we do certain things in our own culture. I specifically, I think that I noticed how casual American culture is once I got back. I mean, how you don't have to directly speak up to or down to somebody. Um, I mean, Japanese has several different grammatical structures, I would call them, for depending on who you're talking to. So there's keigo and sonkeigo, which are the respectful terms, and then there's casual Japanese, where the verbs are different. Everything is different, really. Um, and you just notice little things like that a lot more, and it feels foreign and wrong in a lot of ways. I think that to get over it, you just need to be very aware and honest with yourself, and you need to accept whatever you're feeling. If you're ecstatic, that's great, but you might also want to remember that you might want to just ground yourself a little bit and get back into the roots of things. I don't know if this is common, but when I got back, it felt like I was looking for something over and over again. I was looking for the next big exciting thing, and I had to have these really stimulating experiences for things to be interesting. Just because in Japan, that's how it was. Every day was an adventure, and when you come home, it's not necessarily as exciting. And that's okay. There is definitely something good about things being settled and familiar and normal. Um, I don't think I have anything else to talk about on the matter, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know and I will do my best to help you. Thanks.